Welcome back, everybody. I hope you all have had a fantastic day. Welcome to another episode of the Late Night Show, Dr. Kojo. I am your host, Kojo, and I'm checking in from not so sunny Los Angeles, California, because it is a late night show and it is night. But normally it's actually kind of sunny when we start. But I'm a little bit late tonight, but we'll let that slide. But we have a very interesting topic tonight. We're going to be talking about borderline personality disorder. And also histrionic personality disorder. We don't talk about that enough on this channel. So we'll get into it. But before we get into it, go ahead and let me know where you all are checking in from. Like I said, I'm checking in from LA, and I would love to know where y'all are checking in from. Michelle, what's going on from South Texas? What's up? What's up? Kyle, what's going on? Kyle, Tiffany from Southern Missouri, Ohio in the house. So sad. Oh, all right. Yeah, we got a good topic to get into. Waukesha, Wisconsin. What's up, Tristan? Kentucky in the house. I've been watching the trial every day. Okay, this is a very this is an important live. It really is. Louisiana, Phoenix, Annabelle, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Good evening from Canada, Indiana, Indy, Columbia, Tennessee, Ontario, Canada, Ohio, Alabama. Okay, people from all over. All right, guys, let's get into the topic, right? So, I'm not sure if y'all have heard, but there's this trial going on right now. This defamation case between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I've been keeping, close tabs on it, and I always look for things that are happening, that are going on in the news that we can talk about, where we can extract some type of educational value from it. I don't know Johnny Depp, nor do I know Amber Heard, never, but I'm watching like everybody else, and it looks like today a clinical psychologist, pull up the article here, clinical psychologist had diagnosed Amber Heard, a forensic clinical psychologist who had evaluated Amber Heard had diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. So we're going to get into that. Both of those are cluster B personality disorders, and that might not mean anything to you all. But we're going to get into it and really talk about it. I see somebody saying, I have borderline. Not all of us are like that. Correct. So here's the thing with borderline personality disorder. Just because one person, exhibits certain symptoms doesn't mean that, like, I believe that you can have two people who have borderline and they're not the same. But within the core of BPD, you have, this instability, within your relationships, right? Now that could be to like a wide degree, right? Or it could be some instability that kind of just lingers, right? And it's threatening relationships, friendships, how you feel about yourself. And, at the core of it, at least with borderline personality disorder, at the core of it, you have, this sense of this fear of abandonment, right? And I think all of us, look, every human being, even the hardest person, walking around, still wants love, right? So we all do, to some degree, kind of fear, like, what would happen if the people that I love stopped loving me, or if they, didn't want to be with me. But with BPD, a lot of times you see like an intense fear of abandonment. And I'm not justifying anything that she's done. I heard something about the feces in the bed. I'm not justifying any of that, and I have to even go back and look at and see what she did specifically. But there is that intense fear of abandonment, right? And I think one key difference between somebody who doesn't have borderline personality disorder and somebody who does, right, is that if both people, kind of worry about others leaving them, the person with BPD may have more so of an intense fear that somebody's going to abandon them, and because of that, you may do something to compensate for it, beforehand, like maybe self-sabotage or splitting. There's so much that can happen with BPD, and I'm happy that we're actually able to talk about this, on this level, right? Because we have to eliminate the stigma, that's especially with, I think, cluster B personality disorders, right? With BPD and antisocial and then histrionic personality disorder, we have to eliminate the stigma around it, right? And I think when people think of, somebody who has borderline personality disorder, the first thing that comes, like, at least from what I've seen in the media, right? I don't know about y'all, let me know in the comment section. I'll be checking that in a second. But I don't know about y'all, but from what I've seen in the media, when they're trying to portray somebody with borderline personality disorder, they're always going to get like a lady, and they're going to make her like overly sexual, and they're going to make her somebody who uses sex to get what she wants, and then she's jumping from this relationship to that relationship. And I mean, you could see maybe components of that with BPD, but guys can have borderline personality disorder, right? It's not just a lady thing. So there's so many different ways that it appears, and just the fact that we're having this conversation is good, so we can break the stigma and really get to the bottom of it. So in addition to her having BPD, she also had the clinical psychologist also diagnosed her with histrionic personality disorder. And it's wild to me, at least on this channel, right, that I haven't made a single video about HPD. I haven't made not one video about histrionic personality disorder. And it's something that we spend a lot of time in school talking about. And I think it goes undiagnosed a lot, right? And, when you have somebody with HPD, histrionic personality disorder, I like to think of it as somebody who, they'll do anything for the limelight. Like they want to be the center of attention, and a lot of times you do see like, they might be sexually provocative, or, there's still that instability with relationships. Sometimes there's a lot of overlap between histrionic and borderline personality disorder. So I wouldn't be surprised that, the clinical psychologist diagnosed her with both, or that people could have both, right? Because there is that overlap sometimes. But you see this, like, everything has to be around them, that type of thing. And it all kind of comes back to that person. And one thing with a histrionic personality disorder that I want people to know is that people can get better, right? Even with BPD, even like someone who meets the textbook definition of a narcissist, I've seen people get better and people work on themselves, right? But you have to have that desire to want to work on yourself. Without that, it's going to be hard. Like, you might need a catalyst that gets you going. And let me get some of the comments here, because I see y'all typing away. Let me acknowledge them. I've got BPD, and you make a good point about it. It could be good to talk about it right now and to fight stigmas. Savannah, I agree. You have to talk about it, and you have to give people who have a diagnosis a safe space, right? But at the same time, we have to put boundaries in place. Like, that does not mean that you can, like, throw feces in them. Like, it doesn't excuse, right, inexcusable behavior, if that makes sense, right? And I think Johnny Depp had at one point, I could be wrong, but he had said something about maybe she had sliced his finger, or there's some type of, violence going on. So like, BPD doesn't, all of these mental health conditions is not an excuse to do those things. So I just want to make sure that people get that. All right. And let me get to some more of these comments. Yeah, forensics. Yeah, I thought I mentioned narcissists as well. Since the BPD's hell, it can be difficult, and like, I made a video and I posted it. I know I posted here on Facebook, right? And I know people watch my show on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. So shout out to everybody who's watching in general, right? But when I posted that video about BPD, I made sure to put in there that at least I would always tell my patients, like, if you have borderline personality disorder, you can almost expect your relationships to be a little harder, because the treatment for BPD is something that we call DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. Just know it's a form of therapy. It's like another form of CBT, and it helps to keep your mood even. Helps you, like, think before you do things. Helps to kind of keep you stable in a sense. And one part of dialectical behavioral therapy that I like is called radical acceptance. Something really bad happens, it happened like that. You accept it, you keep it pushing. Something good happens, you accept it, you keep it pushing. Like, I was in the DMV this morning for 4 hours. It drained me, it pushed me behind. I'm even late for this live stream because of it. But it happened, so I've accepted it, and now I can push, past it. So likewise with borderline, like, I would always tell my patients, back in the day, I'd say, hey, you can almost expect relationships to be a little bit harder, right? But if you know that these are your tendencies and this is what you've done because of trauma, because of in past relationships, or because of this, even if you mess up and you make a mistake, you don't have to like, blame, be accountable, but you don't have to say, oh, dang, I can't get it right. No, you couldn't get it right in this moment. But next time you got a pretty good shot of handling the situation, because now we know, so now we can prepare for it, right? And over time, as you get better, it's not like, your relationships are getting like easier. You're just getting stronger, if that makes sense. Let me know if that way over your heads. Like, the condition may never go away, but you just get better tools to manage it, and then your relationships improve, right? And let me see. Can you tell the difference between? So, Kai, good question. I love it when y'all ask me these in-depth questions. So a lot of times it's pretty difficult to tell the difference between, because at least in my opinion, I think, yeah, I would say like the majority of patients that I've seen with BPD, there's like some significant like link to trauma in there, right? And I think even with Amber Heard, I think I had the article somewhere here where, actually right here, the psychologist was saying Heard may have feared abandonment. Um, the evaluations, Dr. Curry said, involved looking into Heard's home life, her relationship with her family, which Heard has said involved abuse, school life, friendships, career history, and other personal relationships. So sometimes the trauma that people pick up over time, is significant, especially with BPD. So sometimes, I'm not gonna lie to you, Kai XJ, it can be really difficult to tell the difference between BPD and complex PTSD. But I think with CPTSD, and CPTSD is not recognized in the DSM-5, but I do recognize it as a thing. But with CPTSD, we see that trauma. Like, I feel like there's no evidence behind it, but I feel like for me, maybe I would pick up on that, before a personality disorder, because the trauma that occurs during those formative years, that kind of like, you see people who don't really get over that with the complex PTSD type of thing. Like, it still kind of like lingers around, and they may not, meet the criteria for a personality disorder, but you can tell that, okay, there is this PTSD lingering around, right? And let me see. Hey, I asked a question about dating someone with BPD and PTSD in the early stream. The tips have helped. Alex, I'm happy that the content is helpful. If this is not helpful, like then y'all have to benefit from it, right? What's the point of me going live if nobody's benefiting from it? So I appreciate that. Amber says she would rather fight than have him leave. So Amber, I could see how somebody with borderline may do this, right? I'm not saying that everybody with borderline does this. I want to be very careful with my words, right? Because you don't want to generalize. But if you have an intense fear of abandonment, right? And when you like, the word intense is the key there, right? Everybody, like I said, you might fear people leaving you, but an intense fear, you may go to extreme lengths to keep that person with you. And that might be in the form of fighting, right? But I'm not saying that that's the situation with her. Keep in mind, I don't know her. I'm not involved in this case, right? I did do a 1.5 years of forensic psychiatry back in Virginia. So a lot of reading through the article here, I was like, oh, that reminds me of like back at work, back in Virginia. But I'm definitely not affiliated with this case at all. Yeah, Marie, look, there's a reason why I keep coming back to do this. Like, I get like a high from somebody like Alex saying, oh, the content was helpful. I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm like, if nobody's benefiting from it, like if you're not learning, if you're not laughing, like if you're not having a good time, then like, you could be doing anything else instead of watching my show, but I appreciate it. So you can have Dawn, you can, if I don't know if you're asking a question or not, but it's very possible to have a bipolar and BPD. And at least in this case, the psychologist, They did not say that she had, bipolar disorder, but it is entirely possible for somebody to have these two right here. I've seen that a couple of times, but what I see for the most part is I normally see people mix up borderline with bipolar, right? Like people will say bipolar when they're trying to describe borderline. That's what I see more. But yes, you can have these two right here. Um, Let me see. Um, Ebony says, I have BPD and it's hard for me to set boundaries. Any suggestions? So the first thing that comes to mind here, Ebony, is sometimes when it's hard for you to set boundaries, you may, at least in the beginning, you may want to try and get external accountability, right? You might want to have other people help you out with that, right? And this is where it helps to have a good support system. And if you have somebody who, you can be upfront with and they know what you're struggling with, then you can say, hey, hey, blah, blah, blah. I struggle with X, Y, and Z. Is there any way that we can kind of prepare for this, or can you put this boundary in place for me? And sometimes it's easier to respect external boundaries as opposed to the ones that we create for ourselves. Right. Ray, I appreciate that. Thank you. It lets me know that I'm going in the right direction with this, because sometimes I'm like, are people really? Well, I mean, I know people are, benefiting from it, but I'm like, if this needs to be, it can't just be like me reading from I got a DSM-5 somewhere, but it can't just be me reading from the DSM-5 with glasses on. But all right, it needs to be a little entertaining, but you have to pick something out from it, right? Can you talk a little bit more about HPD? I've been trying to get information for years with this. Right. So I don't know if this is China Bar or Sina Bar, or I want to say Sina, but I think that it's very interesting that you said, especially with men, because there are certain mental health conditions that when you say it, people think of women automatically, right? The first thing that I can think of, if somebody was playing a game with me and they said, what mental health condition would people say the overwhelming majority are women, I would probably either pick histrionic personality disorder or borderline, because I think the general public associates women with BPD, women with HPD, but men can also have it as well. I think I actually have an article. Yeah. So I actually have a little Google document. I came prepared today. I'm not always prepared, but I came prepared today, as if Sinabar knew. As if I knew she was going to ask this question. But let's talk about it right here. So this is the DSM-5 criteria for a diagnosis of histrionic personality disorder. And I'll read it so y'all can get the background and we'll get into it. So per the DSM-5, a diagnosis of histrionic personality disorder requires a pervasive and ubiquitous pattern of consistent attention-seeking behaviors and emotional dysregulation. Keep in mind, we see the emotional dysregulation in borderline as well. Makes sense. They're all close to be, right? But emotional dysregulation as outlined by specific manifestations. A diagnosis of histrionic personality disorder requires meeting 5 or more of the following criteria. Number 1, uncomfortable when not the center of attention. We talked about that, right? Seductive or provocative behavior, shifting and shallow emotions, uses appearance to draw attention, impressionistic and vague speech, dramatic or exaggerated emotions, suggestible, easily influenced by others, and the last one, considers relationships to be more intimate than they are. And these patients take repression and dissociation as a significant form of defense mechanism, right? So those are the 8, symptoms, and 5 or more, is HPD. But keep in mind, when you see, because anybody can go by the DSM-5 and go through it and become a scholar, but keep in mind that anybody in the world could use your appearance to draw attention, or you could be uncomfortable when not being the center of attention. But in the beginning, I said a diagnosis of histrionic personality disorder requires a pervasive and ubiquitous pattern of consistent, this is consistent, it's pervasive, you would see this thing like in different settings multiple times over and over and over again, right? Um, uh, Let me see. Can you talk more about taking romantic relationships for more than they are? Elaborate a little bit, please. Yeah. So at least in to my knowledge, let's say you have somebody with histrionic personality disorder, and they consider relationships to be more intimate than they are. Um, I don't always think of this as like romantic. I think of this as any relationship, right? It's almost as if like so Kai, let's say you're walking somewhere in Hollywood, and I meet you, Kai. I've never met you a day in my life, right? But I meet you, and we're talking, we're friends, right? We have some sort of relationship. That's me like talking to you, and sometimes like I'll place myself, in the center, and I'll say like I'll be like the topic of discussion, but I'll start maybe calling you by like a nickname. I might say like, "Hey, Kai, like, what's up? What's up?" Like, I'll start acting as if I already know you, and then I might get close. This can be done many different ways, at least in my opinion. Maybe you're like hugging as if I've known you for a long time. I don't know you, right? Maybe using like a pet name, or maybe somebody could say, "Hey, babe, what's up?" Like, you just met the person. You normally wouldn't, be that way from the jump. And man, so many comments here. I want to get to some of these comments. Mickey Ficky, Nate, what's going on? How you doing? I love the content. Reminds me, yeah, Carrie, ADHD is something else. I'm scrolling through this. This is the garbage mindset that harms. All right, I don't know what's going on with these comments. I'll just keep going on. Can you speak on medication? Is so at least when you're talking about BPD, HPD. Sometimes we do use meds, mood stabilizers, antidepressants, sometimes antipsychotics to help stabilize mood. But therapy is normally like the mainstay treatment. Is it possible to be misdiagnosed with BPD if you really have HPD? Olivia, I'm sure. Humans make mistakes, right? I could make mistakes. I'm human. I've made mistakes, but like consciously, you always think about, all right, let me go back and review this diagnosis. Was that the right diagnosis? Was that the right, course of action? So I think Johnny. Well, I mean, maybe like I haven't seen that in the trial yet. Maybe Johnny. I don't know. I'm not sure. Someone says kids dating goodbye. So real quick, I'm gonna get back to the comments. They're coming so fast, but when people like sometimes people, it's a lie that's been told where people will say things like, "Oh, if you have BPD or ADHD or whatever, like you can't date." You can. Will it be harder? It could be, right? But you have to find your cadence of how you would move around, and you want to be accountable, right? Like I always say, a mental health diagnosis is not an excuse to treat people however. But if you have a tendency to act a certain way, and you take certain steps to account for that, then if you mess up, you can't be hard on yourself. You messed up, right? Hey, I'll do better. At least I'm accountable, and I have a desire to be better. But you don't have to say I'm undateable or I can't date anymore. So I think that's something that I wish, I wish people. But sometimes this is coming from like people like me, right? The clinicians and the doctors who are saying, who will tell a patient, or maybe they'll, the way they treat you, you can tell that you have no hope. Does that make sense? Like you ever go to a doctor's office and you feel like they just want to get me out of here ASAP, like they don't care, that type of thing. Sometimes people will take that and then think in their minds like, hey, this person, they don't care about me, and then you might take that type of thinking to a relationship. Like I can't have a successful relationship. Nobody cares about me. Let me get to some of these comments. Just how many mental disorders can you have at once? Is there a name for? I'm not sure how many you can have at once, but I think you're saying, are you talking about comorbidities? Like if you have BPD and something else, we have different fancy words in the medical world, but you definitely could have more than one. And sometimes like I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I've had patients, I'll never mention the hospital or throw a certain clinician under the bus. Y'all know I'll never do that, but I've inherited certain patients where like you'll get the like the let's say this is a washcloth, but let's say this is uh the paper that the social worker brings in, right? It'll say Mr. John Doe, and they'll have all the diagnoses. Now see BPD, ADHD, PTSD, GAD, MDD, bipolar, schizoaffective. I'm like, hold up, how are they? Like sometimes you'll see like somebody diagnose them with all those conditions, and I'm like, what's going on, right? Like you can't have you can't have major depressive disorder. Well, you could have major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder, but if you started off with depression, right, and they diagnosed you with bipolar disorder, then like they would update your diagnosis, right, and then when you're depressed, we consider that to be bipolar depression, right? So there's levels to this thing, and yeah, we have to get on the right page because sometimes like you'll get people with all these conditions. I'm like, all right, there's no way that they have all these like all at once, and then I'm like, why are they on 11 different meds? But yeah, the system is a system, right? System is a system. Let me see. Let me get some more. I had psychiatrists immediately tell me I should be institutionalized because my BPD said I was a danger to society. Ooh, that doctor sucked. I'm sorry. I was horrified and left crying. I'm a fully functioning member of society who has never committed a crime. Works full time, raising a child. I did not deserve to be treated like I'm inherently evil because of the way my brain's wired. Mel, I'm sorry you had that experience. That doctor really sucked. And the doctor could have been like a smart doctor. Like he could have known the DSM-5 from front to back. But if you don't treat people well, then you suck, right? For lack of a better term. And I know, like I wasn't gonna talk about it online, but people were asking me questions about like, do clinicians really like amongst like the medical world, do clinicians like look down upon BPD or do clinicians wish that they wouldn't have patients who have BPD? And like I told you, I'll never, to my knowledge, I'll never lie to y'all. And I do believe that like within the medical world, like BPD has an awful name. Like, I've been there in meetings, you see a patient, and this is not to discourage y'all from going to get help, but I'm just telling the truth. You'll see one clinician talking to another clinician, and then when they bring up the fact that someone has BPD, like you can feel like the air leave the other person's body, like, man, like another borderline, But I mean, like you all already know this, right? Like I'm not saying anything that's new, but once again, and when I say clinicians, even though I don't think this way, we're still kind of grouped into the same category. So if somebody came to see me and that was a previous experience, they don't know who I am, right? So that all they have is like they could have had an experience like this. So I think like we have to just get better all across the board, and just like, will it be harder dealing with a patient who has BPD? For sure, it could be, but that's your job, right? It's like you go to, like I use the mechanic example all the time. If I go to a mechanic, right, and and he's a mechanic, he or she's a mechanic who they say that they can fix any car. And if I take up, if I take like a old Chevy, a '90s Chevy into the shop, he should fix it, right? And if I take a new Benz into the shop, he should fix it, right? Like the mechanic should be able to fix everything. So likewise, like your provider, your doctor, your mental health specialist, like they went to school, especially if they're a psychiatrist, psych NP or psych PA, psychologist, social worker. If they had that specialized mental health training, they went to school to be able to take care of everything. So you can't really like take shortcuts. I mean, you can, but some people are like that. But I like to believe that the majority of people are not. I will say that the majority of people are not. Do you know why so many psychiatrists are quick to say bipolar when a patient only exhibits periods of depression? I don't know, but normally, what I see more is people being diagnosed with depression and being given an antidepressant, and they actually have bipolar disorder. But maybe the doctor's not doing a thorough assessment. Callie, I'm not too sure. Leilani, I appreciate that. And it's funny because sometimes I don't like to look at the numbers on the live stream because I want to have the same energy regardless of if it's like 4 people watching me or 400. But no, it's cool. Like we're growing, getting bigger. We just reached 400,000 followers on Facebook, so that's super cool. I didn't get to make a video to thank y'all, but like, or even I'll post something on Facebook to thank y'all. But it's super cool, like what y'all have, the love y'all have shown for me. So like, I'm gonna keep going harder, right? I'm gonna keep posting these videos. I'm gonna keep answering people's questions. I'm gonna keep keeping an eye on like the news and current events to see what's going on. And like with this, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case, like now I'm even like tuned into it more to figure out how I can answer people's questions. But yeah, thank you so much for 400,000 followers on Facebook. We're getting close to 3 million on all platforms, so it's super cool for me. It really is, and I appreciate y'all. Thank you. Do BPD? Do patients with borderline lie a lot? So I think everybody lies, right? But you could have somebody with BPD could lie with an intention of trying to do something else, right? Or maybe manipulate, or maybe you're trying to prevent somebody from leaving you, right? So anybody could lie, right? But to say lie a lot, I'm not sure if you mean lie a lot. Lori, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. This question, Kara, I believe you could for the first question, and yeah. So yes and yes, in my opinion. Nah, I appreciate that. But look, none of this happens without the whole community. So I appreciate y'all, and yeah, and I try my best to show up as myself. And yeah, Leilani, you're right. Yeah, even in the morning lives, even if it's like a couple of folks, we're still having a good time, right? We're having a blast. I'm looking at my Mickey Figgy, looking at my time. All right. Mickey Figgy. Is there any, when you say new meds available for what? Can you elaborate, Crystal Rose? Janet, I appreciate you. Thank you for thank you for the attention. Like y'all, this, for what I do online, like we're number one with what we do. So without all these eyes here, like no content creator wants to be posting videos and then 2 people watch it. So I appreciate y'all. So somebody dropped a magic word in the chat. If you know how this goes, you know how this goes. I'm BPD and I find it hard to lie, actually. Right. So that proves my point. That's why you can't generalize and say every patient with borderline, lies, right? Because you can still meet the criteria for something, and 2 people who both have that same thing may like act differently, right? So just have to be careful with generalizing. Caching your stats. The stars. The stars. I would say that the stars are automatic, but it's a brand new program. And keep in mind, even though people have to pay to send the stars, I'm just competitive. That's inside my ADHD. I just want to have them. I want to beat everybody who else was invited to be part of the stars program. Like I'm just competitive like that. So that's a cool thing for me. But I'm sure Facebook will like cash it out. Cheers. 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 All right, let me answer 2 more questions before I get off. While some people here wanting to, we must get more of those. All right, so Crystal, I'm happy you brought this up. We must get more men involved. How do we do that? All right, so to be honest with y'all, like people would DM me and say like, "Oh, like you're a mental health hero." Like it's so rare to see guys passionate about this type of thing. Like like I respect you and I'm like, thank you, I appreciate that. But for me, if I didn't like and I stumbled into like mental health and psychiatry, right? Like I took a job at a psych hospital and I ended up liking that and I ended up staying. But if I didn't go that path, I probably would not have been interested in mental health. Because it's like there's so many other things to do. So like, why mental health? Like, why is it important? So for me, I just kind of stumbled into it, and like it was helpful for me because like as I was learning, I was also living life too, right? Making dumb mistakes and also just like living life. So as I'm learning professionally, like I'm like tying, the loose end. I'm putting two and two together in my personal life, and I'm like, oh shoot, it is important to talk about mental health. So I think it's hard and I don't know, like 85% of my audience, 82, women, so I like, we set up another gaming channel, so I'm gonna post gaming. I'm gonna post like another like I'm gonna post content specifically for gamers who want to learn about mental health, and of course, all y'all are invited to come out there too. But I'm trying some new things, talking more about sports. And I love sports, so I could talk about sports like only sports, right, without mental health. So hopefully, I can break into that sports and mental health lane. But yeah, I think guys are. It doesn't come as easily to us, right? For whatever reason, a really really good question. Let me see. Jay's asking this question, so let me go ahead and answer it. Why does bipolar disorder get misdiagnosed as BPD? Is one type of bipolar disorder more subject to misdiagnosis? So once again, like I say, you have to account for human error. Like even the smartest, you know, doctor or nurse practitioner can still make an error, right? I don't think one type of bipolar gets more misdiagnosis as borderline personality disorder. I think the main thing that trips up people is the mood swings, right? Because you see mood swings in both, but like without a manic episode, there is no bipolar, right? So the mood swings with borderline are more like transient; they happen faster. Things in your external environment are kind of causing that, right? Like your boyfriend broke up with you, or your girlfriend broke up with you, or somebody threatened to leave you, and then like you had this mood swing. Whereas with bipolar disorder, like a lot of times it's occurring within the context of mania. Like you're manic, you haven't slept in days, your speech is pressured, you're doing things that you wouldn't normally do. So there's a clear difference. And of course anybody could make a mistake and get them confused, but I believe that like somebody like me, like a trained professional in mental health, they shouldn't miss his diagnosis, right? This is kind of textbook. Like if your primary care provider got misdiagnosed bipolar or something else, I think that'd be more forgiving. But a mental health specialist really should not miss his diagnosis, just in my opinion, right? And that doesn't mean that I couldn't miss. I could miss it, right? Maybe I'm having an off day. Maybe my dog peed somewhere. I don't know, but you shouldn't miss it if that makes sense. You shouldn't miss it. But yeah, I've got to dip out because behind today. I got a couple things done. Oh, let me see. Ah, I got a good text. Do y'all know that feeling when you get somebody to watch your dog? It's the best feeling ever. I'm like, I found a dog sitter. It's so hard to find a dog sitter. So I can only imagine what happens like when I have kids. I'm looking for a babysitter. Gotta call Big Mama to come to the house. But either way, but yeah. So that's it for tonight's show. We'll be back tomorrow. I may be able to hop on the show in the morning. That would be the goal. But if not, we'll definitely have the late night show tomorrow night. It's been a blast, and I'll be monitoring the case between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I'm not a fan of like those big public like falling out. Like I would, I would hope that as we talk about mental health more, people can like split up and like let things go. But apparently, like a lot happened in this case, and I hope everybody feels respected at the end, regardless of whatever happens, right? But I hope, Johnny, finds peace, and I hope Amber also finds peace as well. Like, I imagine it could be really um, difficult, to have such a high profile case and everybody is talking about it. So I definitely wish both of them the best of luck as they navigate through this, difficult chapter of their lives. But I'm signing off until tomorrow. Peace. See y'all soon.